be talking with Angela Duncan. Angela is the founder of Empower Her Money and focuses on providing financial coaching to help individuals break cycles of poverty and achieve financial empowerment. Her approach includes personal coaching and public speaking to change money mindsets and foster investment in one's future. Angela is committed to closing the poverty gap by empowering others to change their financial future. She firmly believes that no matter where one starts in life, they have the power to shape their own destiny. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by your divorce or just your current station in life, please don't be. Angela is here to help us break it down so you can feel confident and prepared by creating a clearer picture of not only your existing financial situation, but how you can tackle the personal and mindset challenges that you might be facing moving forward. So grab a cup of coffee or your beverage of choice, buckle up, let's get you financially empowered. Angela, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited for this topic.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I like everything you said, you say in your bio and in the conversations we've had in the past. I mean, it really resonates with me because I personally am one of those people that believes in everything that you just said, right? Like my family growing up, we have the product of a divorced parents, and we really struggled financially as my family and I as when I was a kid. So, which is really what led me into doing the work that I do. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your story and what you got into, how you got into this particular field in this line of work.
Yeah. So, I did grow up in poverty as well, Section 8 housing, welfare, lived in many states, cars, parks, other people's houses, all before the age of 15. And my mom was divorced. And one of the things that I always thought is if she had better financial education, either during the marriage or at least after, then perhaps, my childhood would be different. And not that I would ever change that because it has gotten me to who I am today. But I thought that there's probably other women out there in very similar situations where they just don't know about money. They weren't taught, they didn't handle the money in a relationship. And then when that relationships end, then they've got children to support. And sometimes, no assets, no job, they haven't worked in years. And trying to maneuver this whole new lifestyle can be very challenging and overwhelming. So that's, kind of what I love to do is I want to teach women financial independence.
Yeah. And I know one of the things that we work with all of our clients, not only in a traditional financial planning setting, but also when we're helping people navigate their divorce, the one thing, and it's not sexy. Nobody likes to talk about it with their friends because it's not going to, we don't talk, it's not about like cryptocurrency and all the fancy stuff that's out there. It's just the basics, right? Which is budgeting for us, right? And that's the one thing that we start with is just getting understanding of what's coming in, what's going out, and really how their life is going to be impacted day one of their new financial life, their new single life after the divorce is settled. So I'd love to hear more about some of your insights on, the aspects of budgeting and some of the things that are important for our listeners to know.
Yeah. And you hit it on the nail right there. Like a old school piece of paper and pencil person. So write down what is absolutely necessary first. What in your life do you feel like you just cannot cut out? And there could be some extras in there. That's not necessarily, just food, water, housing. It could have some additional stuff in there that you do want to maintain some, type of lifestyle. But just be honest with yourself. What is it that you can really cut out of your life, at least just to start? And then start on the journey, because there's so many things in the rebuilding of that. It could be rebuilding of your credit, could be rebuilding of a savings account, could be rebuilding of retirement plans. And that all has to start with your budget. And that's the foundation of your financial plan. You've got to figure out what does that lifestyle look like for you. And if you have children, what are some of the things that you have to have? And just to start, cut everything else out immediately. And then you can always add it back in as you start to go along this journey, right?
Mm-hmm. What the one thing we always come up against though is balancing out those competing priorities. And I have my own thoughts on this, and this is not an opportunity for me to share that, but I'd love to hear what yours are because we face this all the time. It's, do I save for my own retirement? Do I put the kids through college? Do I drive the car a couple more years, until the wheels fall off type of thing? Or can I budget for a new vehicle so I can reliably get to my place of employment? All those things, there's all these spinning plates, all these competing priorities. How do you, with the clients that you work with, how do you help them navigate some of those decisions?
Yeah. So first, if there's children involved and they're old enough to really have a conversation, sit down and have a family conversation with them. It's so important for you to start teaching your kids about money as soon as possible. And this life event could be a great opportunity for you to teach your children about money and to help them understand and then build that foundation for themselves. And when they're part of that decision, then maybe they'll realize that they don't need as many activities. Maybe they can focus on one to start, right? I'm a huge believer in getting out of credit card debt. I mean, with interest rates in the 30% area, there's not much you can invest in that will match or beat that. So let's get out of credit card debt. Student loans for your kids are available. So college savings should be one of your last priorities. You need to build that foundation first. Get out of debt as much as possible. If you need to hold on to that car for a little bit longer, then that's part of it. You know, as an 18 to 20-year-old, I took the bus to college, so I didn't even have a vehicle at that time, right? Just figuring out what is the most important things to you. So credit card debt, get out of debt. Retirement planning, sure, once you're stable enough and you feel like you've got good income and your budget is pretty solid, but I wouldn't even think about investing until you're out of credit card debt first.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think that getting out of debt and getting that emergency reserve, nice and padded, for those of you listening, the CFP, the Certified Financial Planner Board of Standards rule of thumb is if you're a single wage earner, which many of you will be after you finalize your divorce, you should have anywhere between 6 to 12 months worth of expenses saved up in cash, high yield savings account, FDIC insured type of account in order just to cover your emergencies if something arises, because you don't want to have to put things on credit cards. If the water heater breaks down or you get a flat tire or need to, put a new set of tires on the car, those types of things that come up. So I think this is amazing advice so far. What are some of the big mistakes that you see people make? And I, again, have my theories because I've been a CFP for almost 20 years now, and I've been doing this work just a long time like you have. What are some of the big mistakes that people make?
Well, when I went through my divorce, I'm someone who's been teaching and studying money for a long time. So I knew exactly what our balance sheet looked like. Your balance sheet is what is all of the assets that you have. And if you think you're starting to go down this divorce path, try and figure out as quickly as possible, what does your financial picture look like together? And understand that, the splitting of the assets, while 50-50 is typically how the courts will decide. For me, I ended up with less. For me, it wasn't worth the battle, and I wanted to walk away and have peace and not fight. So I understood that that's, my vantage point or how I thought about the divorce situation. And so if you're in that pre-divorce or heading down that route, you've got to kind of figure out some of those things for yourself too, especially if you haven't handled all the finances. You want to, at least see what grasp you can get on that financial picture. Because I think what happens is people leave that relationship and they think everything's going to be fair. But unfortunately, when you're fighting, it doesn't always end that way. And so what is it that is in your financial house before you leave that relationship, knowing what that looks like so that you can, start to rebuild. And I think one of the hardest things for me was really changing that lifestyle, right? We owned companies together. And so he bought me out of those companies. And all of a sudden I have cash, but no income and no job, which meant I couldn't qualify to buy a house. I couldn't qualify to get a car loan because I don't have a job, right? So understanding that some of those obstacles could be what you're going to face or go through after that divorce point, and then just having a strategy. And I love the idea of having just a mentor, someone in your life that can be honest with you, and just a sounding board, non-judgmental. And it may be someone outside of your family and friends, maybe it's in a networking group, or you guys can help each other through a process. I know there's a lot of support groups, but don't be afraid to ask for help. I think a lot of women, oftentimes we feel like we can handle everything on our own. And while you can, you shouldn't. Go through and ask for help. Have someone there with you. It just makes the process so much easier.
Now I have 3 more questions to ask about that, everything you just mentioned there. So I'll try to stay focused here. This is amazing stuff. So my first question is, and I'm going to stack questions, even though I don't like to do that. But the first question is, relative to your divorce, like, what were some of the steps that you took after? Because you're sitting there, you have this, I'm going to say pile of money. I don't know what kind of money this was. It's none of my business, but you have this money after the divorce is finalized because of the businesses and everything else. And like, what did you do? Did you hire a financial advisor? Did you leverage your own experience? Did you hire a divorce coach? What did that look like? And then the second part of the question is like, what knowing that experience that you had, is that what kind of drove you into the work that you do today, and helping empower other women to follow in your footsteps? Like how was it all tied together?
Yeah. So first, I set the money aside and I did exactly what we just said. I figured out what does my budget look like and what are my absolute essentials. So even though I kind of had that, savings account, that money walking away, I didn't treat it as if it exists. I still wanted to start with just the basics and go back to what does my budget look like? What is the lifestyle that I want to live? And I took probably a good 6 months off to go through therapy to kind of get to a better version of myself, because in a divorce situation, I truly believe it takes two people to win and it takes two people to lose. So how can I become a better person so that whatever I do going forward, whatever, if it's a company, investing, getting a job, I knew I needed to fix myself first. So I really just set that money aside and took down the bare essentials. And I ended up paying cash for a house because, again, I said I couldn't even qualify for a loan, right? On paper, I couldn't qualify. I had enough money in the bank for the loan, but because I didn't have a job or that source of income anymore, I just didn't qualify. But I wanted to have, just a safety. That was my safety net. I wanted a house, and everything else I just set aside. I've been real estate investing for over 20 years. So for me, that was really where I leaned back into. But I was a little gun shy because, when you're married, you've got two opinions. You can bounce ideas off of each other and really think outside that box. But when you're by yourself, I was very scared to pull that trigger, even though I know real estate and I've been doing it for a long time. I had to give myself grace that it was okay for me to be scared in that moment and to really work through those emotions so that I could create that income for the lifestyle that I wanted to, have at that point. And so understanding that people get scared and there's so many options that it really creates confusion for people. And I think that's part of what's my driving passion is money doesn't have to be complicated for women. It doesn't have to be complicated for anybody. It really doesn't. And when you have the right tools and resources and you can make educated decisions you want, I love that. I love being able to sit down with someone, help them with their goals, figure out what's important to them, and then kind of be their cheerleader along the way so that we can celebrate together. And then when they have things that don't work out the way that they wanted it to, just to be there and pick them back up. So I understand what that fear feels like, even for someone who knew our financial picture, who knew how to invest and create income, who knew how to run companies. I still had that fear. So I can understand where, the divorced woman can be coming from, because when you have that fear, you tend not to make any decisions and you just stay stuck. So let me help you get unstuck.
How do you shift that money mindset?
It is very emotional. So when I talk about goals, writing down goals for me is not enough. Making goals visual is not enough. I want to know when you accomplish that goal, whatever it is, buying a house, getting out of debt, who's there with you? Who's celebrating? What does that feel like? And I think when we tie that feeling to the goal and that emotion, it just kind of shifts a little bit. And it's not something that's going to work overnight. And there's times where you're going to take 2 or 3 steps backwards before you start moving forward again. But when you can close your eyes and visually see, what does that look like in my life? Who is there with me? And what does this feel like? You're just more likely to start moving forward. And that's really all I want you to do. I want you to take a step forward, and then we can break down that goal into little tiny steps because it's easier to meet and more measurable. And then just kind of keep that momentum little by little. And it's okay if you go slow. Everyone is going to be very different in their circumstance. But when we tie that emotion to the visual of the goals, that's when the mind starts to look for this opportunity. How do I help myself get to that goal? Because I've got this feeling and I've got this visual, and now my mind is going to go seek out that information. And it just kind of opens doors for you. And I think a lot of people are always amazed when I say that, because they're like, oh, that sounds like very fluffy stuff. But I've seen it happen. So I know that it works. And this is how I approach it with my clients.
We follow a similar process, which is the SMART framework for goal setting. I don't know if you've heard of this or not, but
yes.
for listeners that are listening in on this, the SMART framework is to make sure it's specific, measurable, aligned with your, the stakeholders in your life, realistic and time bound. And that's one of the exercises we go through with all of our existing clients, both on the financial planning side and on the divorce planning. Because I think you're right. It's not some of the goal setting tools and resources that are out there that people see on TikTok and on social media and all this other stuff. There's a lot of fluff, right? In our world, me and you, we have to make sure that the clients that we work with have very specific and attainable goals. And it's not just enough one thing to visualize. I love that visualization. Like, just let's be very super specific about it. If you want to buy a house, like how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, what color is it, like, and where is it located? What is the price? Be very, very detailed about all those things. And I think that goes a long way in positioning yourself to be able to actually achieve the goals that you have. If you don't sit down and just write the stuff down and really think it through, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, because you need to have, put a roadmap together. And that's the work that I do, and the work that people like Angela do, can walk you through that. And I guess speaking of that, you may have some tools and resources on your website, or maybe through the coaching that you do, but what are some of the best tools and resources out there for people that are like on the doorstep of going from a dual income family or not being the breadwinner to having to be the breadwinner in the family, and it's now day one of their newfound single life, and they're trying to figure it all out. Are there any actual tools and resources you can share?
Yeah, I mean, figure out what your strengths are and figure out what your partner's strengths are, because now you're going to completely cut off those strengths, right? So whatever it is in your life that maybe your partner was better at than you, this is your time to get educated. And I'm not saying become the master of that, because we are great at what we're great at. And I do believe that you continue to be great at that and not necessarily work on the weaknesses, but understanding enough about the weaknesses as you're leaving that relationship. Just like this, podcast information is free information. YouTube is free information. You don't have to spend money for you to get enough information so that you're confident enough to make the own decisions that you're going to have to make as the single person, right? So that was one thing, is it's like I really dive into books. And even though I study money and I love talking about it, I still read about money all the time, because I know that this is my gift and this is my talent, and I want to continue to grow it so that I can give back to other people. But there's just a lot of information out there that you can utilize to get just the confidence back. Because when you go through divorce, I know for myself, it was really hard on myself. Like, you feel like you're a failure. You feel like, maybe you're never going to find love again, or you're going to be single forever. All of these negative thoughts start coming into your brain. And the best way for you to counteract that is to find information that's positive that you can consume, so that you can have that confidence and stop having those negative thoughts. One of the exercises I like to do with that is when I find myself having a negative thought or saying something that I know is not really true, but in the moment it kind of feels heavy, I think about the old school radios, so like that thought is creeping in and it's a negative thought and I don't want to hear it. I think about really just turning down the knob of a radio station, and then I have to replace it with something positive, and then I turn that knob up, and I have to physically, and again, I do like funny things because I want this to be fun for people, but when we do this knob experience together, I clap, because it snaps you out of that reality and helps you shift to something else. So when I snap, or if I clap, then it reminds me that I don't need to be in that negative moment. That voice I don't need to hear, and I'm going to turn up this positive voice, but I have to do an action for me to remember to move and shift out of that moment into a better moment. So I think we went way off topic with that one, so I apologize.
No, that's amazing. No, totally amazing. I love all this stuff. The psychological aspect of this. This is not my wheelhouse. I know I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a therapist. This is not my background. I believe in therapy and I believe in all of this stuff, but you'll hear when the podcast comes out here in other episodes, we talked with a lot of people that are in that space, because there's something to be said about the work that we do on the IQ side of things, but also the EQ and understanding the emotional aspects of this, and really trying to get people through this divorce and managing those emotions, just put themselves in a much better position, moving forward. So this is amazing. I have tons more questions, but I'm going to try to rein this in here a little bit. So your background and experience is in real estate, right? You've been doing that work for 20 years and you have much more experience there. Carte blanche. Share with our listeners, maybe some things they need to be thinking about relative to the divorce or post-divorce. Free thought here. Anything you want to share in the space of divorce and in investments in general, right? Like, making your first investments after the divorce is finalized, carte blanche in how you respond.
Yeah. So first is looking at your own individual housing. Are you going to be a renter or are you going to buy a home? And do the math behind it, because depending on where you live, the math might make sense for you to rent. And that's okay. If that's going to get you a good financial foundation for you to rent first and then figure out where to buy later, that's fine. I'm here in Miami and it's cheaper still, very expensive, but still cheaper to rent than it is to buy. So if you're in like the Miami market and you find yourself single and now you've got to figure out your own housing decisions, do the math first so that you can do what's best for your financial goals, not necessarily what other people are going to think. Oh my gosh, I'm a renter now. I've always owned my house. That was a shift for me as well. Right out of my divorce, I rented a house for a year, and that was very hard for me because I've always owned a house since I was like 23 years old. So that's my first thing. And then decide, what kind of investor are you? Are you a conservative investor? Do you have enough time to be a little bit riskier? And what does that look like? And I never put all of my eggs in one basket. I know that's very cliche, but even in the real estate market, I'm in 5 or 6 different aspects of real estate. Now, I do still have money in the stock market, do have my 401k or my IRA that I rolled over. So that's in the stock market, but I have a professional financial advisor that's handling that for me. I meet with her every quarter and I make sure that I understand where my portfolio is going and that she's on as me and she understands that I am a conservative investor. I don't want to take big risks. I don't invest in crypto. Anything that's too risky for me, I don't invest in. And then hopefully you get to a point where you can dream a little, right? I like shoes. Shoes is definitely not an investment for me, but I'm also an investor in a whiskey company, right? Because it's just a very, very small piece of my portfolio and I did my research up front. But I thought that would be fun because now I can go to Ireland and write off my trip because I own whiskey over there, right? So when you start that financial picture, pick a lane first and really find someone who's an expert and start there. And then as you build, you can add other pieces to your investment portfolio, whatever that looks like for you, and then get to a point where you're having some fun with it. Because I think when we have a solid foundation and we start doing our investing, you can set aside maybe 5% or less and just have a little fun with it. Who knows? It could go really big or you could lose it all, but you've got to be okay with either outcome on that. And it just makes it more fun. Like I said before, it's like I want to have fun with the goals. I don't want it to be so stringent that you feel like it's a burden to you, because I don't know about you, but I don't want to live my life in a burden. So I wouldn't want to teach you to do that either.
And that's the one thing that maybe that's the misnomer about financial planners, and that's a shame on us for being so stringent and so buttoned up and everything else. And I haven't worn a suit in 5 years, so I'm no longer buttoned up. But as you can tell by my V-neck here, but it's you're absolutely right. There's no sense in just like saying so laser focused on our goals that we forget to live our lives, because our lives are short-lived. I mean, they're going to be over before we know it. And what you just mentioned is exactly what we do with a lot of our clients. We in our world, we call it a core satellite approach. So we have the core investments, the 80%, 90% of the investments that are plain vanilla, boring, invested, in a diversified manner, and we're going to get you from point A to point B, and there's really nothing sexy about it. But then we let people, have a little bit of fun with, whatever that percentage is, to do the, side investing. And I'm so very surprised you don't have crypto. I'm very surprised, because almost everybody I talk with has dabbled in crypto in some respects, which you don't hear much about that.
Should have.
Yeah, probably should have, when Bitcoin was where it was 10 or 12 years ago, when people first started mentioning it to me. I personally do not explore that realm either. So I'm right there with you. Any questions I didn't ask that would be important for our listeners to hear from you on? Any topics or anything that I didn't ask? I always afraid I miss something along the way.
Yeah. So understand that when you get busy in your life, you're in the single life now, perhaps you have kids, they've got schedules, now you're getting a job, or maybe you're running a business. Investing should also fit your personality, but also your lifestyle. So for me, I like to teach passive income investing, which means it's going to create income for you, but it's kind of on autopilot. And you've got to pick your lane. We've talked about real estate. It could be anything from having a single family house and renting it out. Know that you're going to be a landlord and they can call you with a broken toilet on Christmas. It happens to me. But I also do tax lien investing, which I teach because it's still backed by real estate. It's government that has to pay you, and they do pay you. And it just becomes a passive income opportunity for you so that you can continue to live your life. You get some additional income. You're still in the real estate market. You're still investing. And it helps you to grow that, that egg, that nest egg for you so that you can continue to live your life and have more confidence in what your investments look like. I'm a huge believer in retirement planning. There is no loan, as you know, for your retirement. And you've got to make sure that you are making those financial goals. My mom, I love her to death. She thought Social Security was going to, take her through retirement. And unfortunately, it does not cover more than just some basic utility bills. And I'm in a situation where I can help her so that she's not living on the street. But you have to think that those systems that were created 50, 60, 70 years ago and have never changed, they're not going to fit the lifestyle that you're going to want to see in your future. So retirement planning is hugely important.
Yes. Yes, I cannot agree more. Angela, this was awesome. Thank you so much for joining us and for all the I wouldn't say tidbits, they're like gigantic nuggets of knowledge that you've provided for us. This is awesome. So if people are interested in connecting with you and learning more about the work that you do and how they might be able to get some help from you, how can folks find you?
Yes. So my brand is Empower Her Money because it is about her. Website, TikTok, Instagram. And if you're curious and want to take a fun quiz, I do have a quiz that helps you figure out what kind of investor you are. And if you just message me quiz on Instagram, then I'll send you the link to that and you can kind of figure out what kind of investor you are. So that'll help you on your investing journey as well.
Yeah, I follow you on Instagram. It's an amazing feed. So keep it up. You're doing an amazing job. Thank you so much again for joining us today. I will put all this information in the show notes. So if you're driving, if you're not in a place where you can jot down her information, we'll make sure that you have many ways to connect with Angela. All that information will be in the show notes. So again, thank you so much, listeners. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to sharing more information like this and helping you prepare for, navigate, and recover financially from divorce with myself and my team at Allegiant Divorce Solutions. And we'll see you again here very soon.
Thank you for listening to Empower Her Money podcast. I am grateful for you. Please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, like this podcast, share it, subscribe, and let's keep teaching others how to take control and be empowered with their finances.